What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a simple interview and ends up facing the most disrespectful line of questioning in television history? In just 46 seconds, Anderson Cooper would say something so shocking, so completely out of line, that Samuel L. Jackson would do something he had never done before in his entire career: walk off a live interview. The studio lights were bright that evening. Samuel L. Jackson walked onto the 60-minute set with a smile on his face. He was there to talk about his new film, a project he had spent 2 years working on. The audience was excited. This was supposed to be a celebration of his career, his achievements, everything he had accomplished over 4 decades in Hollywood. Anderson Cooper sat across from him in his usual chair. The cameras started rolling. Everything seemed fine at first. "Samuel, thank you for being here," Anderson said. "Happy to be here, man. Always good to sit down and talk about the work," Samuel replied. The first few questions were standard. They talked about the new movie. Samuel explained his character, how he prepared for the role, what drew him to the project. He was animated, passionate, telling stories the way only Samuel L. Jackson can. The audience in the studio was laughing at his jokes. This was going exactly how these interviews normally go. Then something shifted. Anderson leaned forward in his chair. He had this look on his face. Not curious, not interested. Something else. Something that made Samuel pause mid-sentence. "You know, Samuel, I have to ask you something," Anderson said, his tone changing completely. "Sure, go ahead," Samuel said, still smiling but clearly noticing the shift. "Your career has been long, very long. Some might say too long," Anderson said. The audience went quiet. You could feel the temperature in the room drop. Samuel's smile faded just a little bit. "I'm sorry, what?" Samuel asked. "Well, you've been making movies for decades now. And I think there's a question a lot of people are wondering. When are you going to step aside and let younger actors have their moment?" Anderson said this casually, like he was asking about the weather. Samuel stared at him. Just stared. For what felt like forever. "Step aside?" Samuel repeated slowly. "Yes. I mean, you've had your time in the spotlight. You've made your money. Don't you think it's a bit selfish to keep taking roles that could go to up-and-coming talent?" Anderson continued, and somehow, he was doubling down. The crew members off camera started looking at each other. This was not in the script. This was not what they had discussed before the interview. Samuel sat back in his chair. His jaw was tight. Anyone who knows Samuel L. Jackson knows that look. That's the look that comes right before something goes very wrong for somebody. "Selfish," Samuel said, not as a question, just repeating the word like he couldn't believe he heard it. "Well, yes. I mean, let's be honest, Samuel. How many more movies do you really need to make? You're wealthy beyond measure. You've won awards. You've got the respect. Why not retire? Why not give someone else a chance?" Anderson kept going, and the crazy thing was, he seemed genuinely confused about why this might be a problem. "So you're telling me I should retire?" Samuel said, his voice getting lower, more controlled. "I'm saying maybe it's time to consider it. Look at someone like Denzel. He's slowed down. He's selective. He's not in every single movie that comes out. But you're everywhere. Commercials, action movies, dramas, voice work. Don't you ever get tired?" Anderson actually laughed a little bit when he said this last part. Samuel didn't laugh. "Tired," Samuel repeated. "Yes, tired. I mean, surely at your age, you must think about slowing down, taking it easy, playing golf, whatever it is people do when they retire," Anderson said. "Now, here's where you need to understand something. Samuel L. Jackson has faced racism in Hollywood. He's dealt with being typecast. He's fought for every single role he's ever gotten. He's broken barriers. He's opened doors for other actors. And here was Anderson Cooper, sitting in his comfortable chair, on his comfortable show, telling him that he should just go away because he's done enough. At my age," Samuel said quietly. "Well, you're not getting any younger. None of us are. But you especially. I mean, how old are you now? 70-something? Anderson asked. The audience gasped. You don't ask someone their age like that. You especially don't do it in that tone. "How old am I?" Samuel's voice was ice cold now. "Yes, I'm just saying, there's a point where actors need to recognize their time has passed. Look at Gene Hackman. He retired. Look at Sean Connery before he passed. He knew when to stop. Maybe you should take notes," Anderson said, and he said it with this smug little smile. Samuel nodded slowly. He wasn't smiling anymore at all. "Take notes," he repeated. "Exactly. I'm just being honest here, Samuel. Someone needs to say it. You're oversaturating the market. Every time I turn on my TV, there you are. Every time I go to the movies, there you are. Don't you think audiences are getting tired of seeing the same face over and over again? Anderson was on a roll now, completely oblivious to the fact that he had crossed about 17 different lines. The same face, Samuel said. The crew was frantically trying to signal to Anderson to change topics. The producer was making cutting motions with her hand, but Anderson wasn't looking at them. He was locked in on Samuel, and for some reason, he thought this was going well. Yes, the same face, the same voice, the same attitude. We get it. You're Samuel L. Jackson. You say creative curse words. You're intense. But haven't we seen that enough? Isn't it time for something new, something fresh, someone younger, someone more relevant to today's audiences? Anderson leaned back, looking proud of himself for asking the tough questions. Samuel was silent for a long moment. The kind of silence that makes everyone uncomfortable. The kind of silence where you know something bad is about to happen. More relevant, Samuel finally said. Yes. Look, I'm not trying to be rude here. I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking. You're a relic, Samuel. A very successful, very wealthy relic, but a relic nonetheless. And relics belong in museums, not on movie screens. Anderson said this with a straight face. That was it. That was the moment. Samuel L. Jackson stood up. He didn't say a word. He just stood up, removed his microphone, placed it carefully on the chair, and started walking toward the exit. Where are you going? We're not done with the interview. Anderson called after him, suddenly realizing that something had gone wrong, but not quite understanding what. Samuel stopped. He turned around slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was calm but filled with so much power that everyone in that studio felt it. You want to know where I'm going? I'm going anywhere but here. You see, I came here to talk about my work, my craft, the thing I've dedicated my entire life to. And you sit there, in your chair, with your privilege, with your platform, and you tell me that I'm too old, that I'm irrelevant, that I should disappear so some younger person can have my spot, like I didn't earn every single thing I have, like I didn't fight for every role, like I'm just taking up space. Anderson tried to interrupt. Now, Samuel, I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did, Samuel cut him off. You meant it exactly like that. You think because you're Anderson Cooper, because you sit behind this desk, because you work for 60 Minutes, that you can talk to me like I'm nothing, like my career means nothing, like I should just shuffle off into the sunset because you've decided my time is up. I was just asking questions. That's what journalists do, Anderson said, and he actually had the nerve to sound defensive. No, journalists ask questions with respect. They do research. They understand context. What you did was disrespect me on national television. You tried to diminish everything I've accomplished. And for what? For ratings? To create a moment? To seem edgy? Samuel's voice got louder. The audience was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. You want to talk about being tired? I'm tired of people like you who've never had to struggle for anything telling people like me when we should stop. I'm tired of being told I'm too much, too loud, too present, too successful. I'm tired of entitled people who've had everything handed to them trying to decide when I've had enough success. That's what I'm tired of, Samuel said. Anderson's face was red now. He was flustered. I think you're overreacting. These are legitimate questions that people want answered. People? What people? You? Your friends? Because the people who actually matter, the people who actually watch my movies, who appreciate my work, they're not asking me to retire. They're not telling me I'm irrelevant. Only you are. And you know what that tells me? That tells me this isn't about my career at all. This is about you, your ego, your need to feel important by tearing someone else down. Samuel shot back. That's not fair, Anderson said weakly. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I worked twice as hard as most actors to get half the opportunities? Is it fair that I had to prove myself over and over again while others got chance after chance based on who they knew? Is it fair that even now, after everything I've done, I sit down for an interview and get told I should quit? Where's the fairness in that? Samuel's words were hitting like punches now. Anderson tried again. I apologize if I offended you, but I stand by my questions. Of course you do, because you don't understand. You can't understand. You've never had to fight for anything. You've never had doors slammed in your face. You've never had to prove that you belong somewhere. So, yeah, you stand by your questions because in your world, those questions make sense. In your world, someone like me should be grateful for what I've had and quietly go away when people like you decide it's time. The producer was trying to get Anderson to cut to commercial. The crew was in full panic mode, but Samuel wasn't done. "You called me a relic. You said I belong in a museum. Let me tell you something about relics, Anderson. Relics are things that last. Relics are things that survive when everything else falls apart. Relics are things that people remember long after the forgettable stuff is gone. So yeah, maybe I am a relic. But you're not even going to be a footnote," Samuel said, and his delivery was perfect, cutting, devastating. Anderson's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He had no response. There was no response to that. "I've been acting for over 40 years. I've worked with the best directors in the world. I've told stories that mattered. I've created characters that people love. And I'll keep doing it as long as I want to. Not because I need the money, not because I need the fame, but because I love it. Because it's who I am. And no talk show host who's never created anything is going to tell me when to stop," Samuel continued. "Samuel, please, sit down. Let's talk about this." Anderson tried, his voice desperate now. "Talk about what? How you think I'm too old? Too irrelevant? Too present? No, I'm done talking. I'm done listening to you. I came here as a guest. I came here with respect, and you threw that respect in my face. So now I'm leaving. And you can explain to your producers, to your network, to your audience, why Samuel L. Jackson walked off your show. I'm sure you'll come up with some excuse, some spin. But everyone watching knows the truth. You messed up. You disrespected the wrong person." Samuel turned to leave again. "Wait, please. We can edit this. We can start over," Anderson called out, and now he was panicking because he realized how bad this looked. Samuel stopped one more time. He looked back at Anderson with something close to pity. "Edit it? Start over? No, Anderson. You don't get to take this back. You said what you said. You showed who you are, and now you get to live with it. See, that's the difference between us. When I make a choice, I own it. I stand by it. I don't try to edit it away when it doesn't go how I planned. Maybe that's something you should learn." And with that, Samuel L. Jackson walked off the 60 Minutes stage. He walked past the cameras, past the crew, past the stunned audience, and straight out the door. The sound of that door closing echoed through the entire studio. Anderson sat there alone on the stage. His show was in ruins. His interview had exploded in the worst way possible, and all because he thought he could talk down to a legend. The cameras kept rolling for a few more seconds, capturing Anderson's face as he realized the magnitude of what had just happened. Then someone finally cut the feed. In the studio, no one knew what to do. The audience sat in shock. The crew stood frozen. Anderson remained in his chair, probably replaying the interview in his head, probably wondering where it all went wrong. But here's the thing. It didn't go wrong suddenly. It went wrong the moment Anderson decided that his platform gave him the right to belittle someone's entire career. It went wrong when he forgot that respect isn't optional just because you're the one asking the questions. It went wrong when he assumed that Samuel L. Jackson would just sit there and take it. Because Samuel L. Jackson didn't get where he is by taking disrespect. He got there by standing up for himself, by demanding to be treated with dignity, by refusing to accept anything less than what he deserved. And on that night, on that stage, he showed everyone watching exactly what happens when you forget who you're dealing with. The interview was supposed to last 30 minutes. It lasted less than 15. Those 15 minutes included some of the most uncomfortable television ever broadcast. They included a masterclass in how not to conduct an interview. And they included Samuel L. Jackson reminding everyone why he's one of the most respected actors in Hollywood. Anderson tried to speak several times during those final moments, but nothing he said could fix what he had broken. No apology could undo the damage. No explanation could make his questions sound reasonable. He had crossed a line, and Samuel had drawn a new one that Anderson would never be able to cross back over. The studio audience eventually filed out in silence. They had come expecting to see a fun interview with a movie star. Instead, they witnessed a complete breakdown of professional courtesy, a demonstration of what happens when ego overrides common sense, and a reminder that some people will not tolerate being diminished, no matter who's doing the diminishing. As for Samuel, he left the building without speaking to anyone. He didn't give a statement. He didn't explain himself. He didn't need to. His exit spoke louder than any words could have. Back in the studio, the crew started packing up equipment. The producers were probably already on the phone with the network, trying to figure out how to handle this disaster. Anderson remained seated for a while longer, alone with his thoughts and his mistakes. The thing about live television is that you can't take anything back. Once words are spoken, they're out there forever. Once a guest walks off, that moment is recorded permanently. Anderson had created a moment all right, just not the kind he wanted. What makes this whole situation even more significant is that Samuel L. Jackson has done hundreds of interviews over his career. Hundreds. He's dealt with tough questions. Before, he's handled controversial topics. He's navigated difficult conversations with grace and humor. But this was different. This wasn't tough journalism. This wasn't asking hard questions that needed to be asked. This was personal. This was insulting. This was someone using their position to try to make themselves look important by making their guests look small. And that's where Anderson miscalculated, because you can't make Samuel L. Jackson look small. His presence is too powerful. His career is too substantial. His contributions to cinema are too significant. All Anderson managed to do was make himself look foolish. The irony of the whole situation is that if Anderson had shown even basic respect, if he had asked thoughtful questions about Samuel's career instead of suggesting it should be over, they could have had a great interview. Samuel is known for being a fantastic interview subject. He tells great stories. He's funny. He's insightful. He gives good answers. But none of that matters if you start the conversation by insulting the person across from you. What happened on that stage was more than just a bad interview. It was a clash between two completely different worldviews. Anderson's worldview, where people in positions of media power can say whatever they want and expect others to just accept it. And Samuel's worldview, where respect is earned and maintained, where dignity is non-negotiable, where success doesn't mean you have to tolerate being disrespected. Samuel chose dignity. He chose self-respect. He chose to walk away rather than sit there and be insulted on national television. And in doing so, he reminded everyone watching that no platform, no matter how big or prestigious, gives anyone the right to tear someone else down. The silence in that studio after Samuel left was deafening. It was the sound of everyone present realizing they had just witnessed something unprecedented. Talk show hosts have upset guests before. Interviews have gone wrong before. But this was different. This was calculated disrespect, meeting justified anger. This was someone pushing too far and facing immediate consequences. Anderson had probably imagined this interview going very differently. Maybe he thought asking provocative questions would make him seem brave or hard-hitting. Maybe he thought challenging Samuel would make for compelling television. What he didn't anticipate was that Samuel L. Jackson doesn't play those games. He doesn't sit still for bad faith questions disguised as journalism. The beauty of Samuel's response was in its controlled power. He didn't yell, though he would have been justified. He didn't curse, though he's famous for it in his movies. He simply stated the truth, calmly and clearly, and then removed himself from a situation that didn't deserve his presence. That takes more strength than any loud confrontation would have. Every word Samuel spoke after standing up was measured and deliberate. He wasn't reacting emotionally. He was responding with the full force of someone who has spent decades dealing with this kind of treatment in various forms and has finally had enough. His words cut deep because they were true, and truth delivered with conviction is unstoppable. The most powerful moment might have been when Samuel called out the fundamental unfairness of the situation. Here was Anderson, who had been given opportunities based on his family name and connections, telling someone who had fought for everything they achieved that they had achieved too much. The audacity of that statement, the sheer disconnect from reality it represented, was stunning. Samuel's point about relics was particularly brilliant. Anderson meant it as an insult, implying that Samuel was outdated and irrelevant. Samuel flipped it completely, redefining relics as things that endure, that matter, that last. In one sentence, he transformed Anderson's attempted insult into a badge of honor while simultaneously suggesting that Anderson himself would be forgotten. That's the thing about trying to diminish someone who's truly accomplished. If they're smart, and Samuel is very smart, they can use your own words against you. They can show you exactly why your criticism is baseless. They can make you look foolish without even raising their voice. Anderson's attempts to walk things back, to apologize, to minimize what he had said, only made things worse, because they proved he knew he had crossed a line. If the questions were really legitimate, if he truly believed what he was asking, he would have stood by them completely. But he didn't. He tried to backtrack, which showed everyone that he knew he had messed up, but hoped Samuel would let it slide. Samuel didn't let it slide. Why should he? Why should anyone accept being disrespected just to make things easier for the person who disrespected them? That's not how self-respect works. That's not how dignity works. Samuel understood this fundamentally, and he acted accordingly. The request to edit the interview was perhaps the most telling moment of all. It showed that Anderson understood this was a disaster. It showed he knew this would make him look bad. But it also showed that he cared more about his own image than about the genuine hurt and insult he had caused. He wanted to erase his mistakes, not actually address them. Samuel's response to that request was perfect. No. Own what you did. Face the consequences of your words. Don't try to hide behind editing. That takes courage. And that kind of courage is exactly why Samuel L. Jackson has the career he has, while so many others have fallen by the wayside. What makes this whole situation even more powerful is the context of who Samuel L. Jackson is. This is not just any actor. This is someone who has appeared in over 150 films. This is someone whose movies have grossed billions of dollars worldwide. This is someone who has worked with every major director in Hollywood. This is someone who has created iconic characters that will be remembered for generations. And Anderson Cooper, regardless of his fame in journalism, has not done anything comparable in terms of lasting cultural impact. So when Anderson suggested that Samuel should step aside for younger talent, he wasn't just being rude. He was revealing a fundamental misunderstanding of how art and achievement work. Great actors don't stop being great because they age. Their talent doesn't expire. Their ability to move audiences doesn't disappear. If anything, they often get better with experience. Samuel could have chosen to laugh off the questions. He could have given diplomatic answers and moved on. But by choosing to confront the disrespect directly, he did something more important. He set a standard. He showed that being famous doesn't mean accepting poor treatment. He demonstrated that you can walk away from situations that don't serve you, even if it means walking away from a major platform. That's a lesson that extends far beyond this one interview. It's a lesson about self-worth, about knowing your value, about refusing to be diminished by others. It's a lesson that Anderson Cooper learned the hard way that night. The fact that this all happened in just 46 seconds of questioning before things completely fell apart shows how quickly respect can be lost, and how fast a situation can deteriorate when someone decides to be needlessly provocative. 46 seconds of bad judgment led to one of the most memorable interview disasters in television history. As the studio emptied and the lights dimmed, one thing was clear. Samuel L. Jackson had won this confrontation without even trying to. By simply maintaining his dignity, by refusing to accept disrespect, by walking away when the situation became intolerable, he showed everyone the difference between real power and borrowed authority. Real power doesn't need a platform. Real power doesn't need a desk to sit behind. Real power just is. Anderson had the platform. He had the show. He had the